Greetings, planty people, and welcome back to my jungle. So today's video is for all of you beginners out there, and I totally understand how overwhelming it is to get into houseplants. There is so much information out there, some of it not even true. So this is all my experience and a lot of my friends, and just a general consensus of plants that I wouldn't recommend for a beginner. So obviously everyone has different experiences with plants. For example, I get on with string of hearts where a lot of people don't. Do you know what I mean? It really depends on your environment, and there's a few different factors basically. So shall we go for the obvious one? Like I just said, most people don't get on with this plant. Some people find it easy, and that plant is the Cathia in general. These guys are so beautiful to look at, so it attracts a lot of people. Even if you're not into plants, they're just really pretty to look at, and they're quite easy to get a hold of as well, so I guess that kind of lures you in as well. And I've seen them just in supermarkets and just random shops like B&Q, home places. But don't be deceived, these guys are divas. I think I've killed 5 or 6 of these. I've only got 1 remaining. And I've told myself I'm never buying another one again. I don't want to put myself through that stress. The reason why these guys are really tricky is that they crisp up so quickly and for no reason. Because they've got such papery thin leaves, they're very prone to drying out very quickly, and having a crispy leaf isn't usually the look people want to go for. So my little ornata was doing absolutely amazing for a few weeks, and suddenly crisps. It was really sad. And then I think I tried that one 3 times. Each time, disaster. And a lot of people on the internet agree with me. They're too much work. I mean, some people get on with them. I'd probably only recommend them for like an intermediate person with plants, you know what I mean? I just wouldn't recommend it. They're just too much work, and it might put you off plants in the future. I found the easiest one, if you did want to try, is the Cathia network. I found it's easier because it's got thicker leaves, therefore a lot less prone to crust. Another thing with these guys is they're so prone to spider mites. It's ridiculous. I don't know why spider mites love them so much. When I had them, I would have to treat them like every month. They just wouldn't leave. I don't know why. And you don't want spider mites because they basically suck out all the sap from your leaves, and they go all over your plants, and they're really hard to get rid of. Also, they're really hard to see as well, so that doesn't help. And speaking of a spider mite magnet, let's talk about alocasia. So I have a love-hate relationship with alocasia. Still to this day, I'm not doing the best. I'll show you an example actually. So this was my alocasia Frydek. This is my 3rd attempt, and everyone on TikTok was telling me to put it in semi-hydro, so I'm trying that out. So the reason why these guys are so tricky, like I said previously, is spider mites just love them. Especially the velvety ones like the Frydek and stuff like that. And they're also really tricky to get the watering regime correct. If you overwater it, mush. If you underwater it, mush. And this is coming from a lot of experience and a lot of people on TikTok agreeing with my experience. The only ones, if you did want to get into alocasia, that I would recommend are the alocasia wentii or the cucullata. Cucullata? I never know how to pronounce that one. Those 2 are the only ones I've had 100% success rate with those guys. I don't know why. I think they're just built different. I guess they've got thicker leaves and they've got more hardy roots and stuff. I never experienced any rots. They did have a little bit of spider mites at one point, but they recovered a lot quicker than my other ones. So yeah, maybe stay away, especially the Frydek and especially the Zebrina. That one lures people in because it's got these gorgeous zebra-y stems like it says on the name, but they're just disasters. They are disasters, but they're so beautiful. But I hate them, but I love them. Okay, so next plant. This one you see a lot in garden centres because it's beautiful, they're cheap, and they're colourful. They're colourful, and that's what drew me in the first time. So that is, of course, the Fonia, also known as the nerve plant because they have nerves running through the leaves. Now, the reason why I wouldn't recommend these guys is because they love humidity, and they're very easy to overwater. So basically, they droop when they're thirsty. So if it hasn't drooped do not water it because they will just melt into like a puddle of leafy mush, and you don't want that. You don't want that. But if you would want to get a Fonia, the only scenario I would recommend getting a Fonia is if you're putting it in a terrarium, because terrariums are nice and humid and nice and warm. That's the only success I've had with Fonia. So if you want to get into terrariums, definitely get Fonia. I've said that way too many times, it's not a word anymore. But yeah, they're just really tricky, and also they don't grow very big. I know a lot of people get the satisfaction of growing a small plant big. They get a little bit bushier. They're more spread in the wild. They're more of a carpety plant. I mean, you're welcome to try. Everyone has different experiences, but from what I found, I'd stay away. Okay, so the next plant you will see in a lot of shops because they're just so cheap. So this, of course, is the fern. And I think fern are beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but this is one plant that I really wanted to get on with nice and easily, but so in the forest they grow on kind of mossy side verges, and they love the humidity. They don't like to dry out whatsoever. And the only success I've had with ferns is if I keep it in a pot with no drainage and just fill it with moss and literally just water it probably every 3 days or so, and I keep it in the bathroom as well. It seems to be okay actually, but a lot of people like to have ferns everywhere, and I totally understand, but the slightest bit of dryness, they crisp and they shed everywhere. So that's another plant that's good for a terrarium. So similar with the Fonia, love a terrarium, love the moisture, love the warm, do not like to dry out too much. And they like more light than you think they would. The only fern I would recommend as a beginner, surprisingly, is the staghorn fern. This one is so thick and chunky that it can handle a little bit of a drought period. So that one and just a random fern I found at the shop in a cup with moss are the only success I've had, unfortunately. But I really would like them to be easier because they're so beautiful. They give me that kind of whimsical woodland vibe. I mean, that's where they're from, but I just think they're gorgeous. It's just the shame they are so tricky. I'm yet to try them in semi-hydro. That actually might help. I'll have to experiment. Okay, so next one I have slated so much because 9 times out of 10 people just can't get on with this plant, and that's of course the string of pearls. Now you're probably thinking you've got one in the background. That one's slightly different actually. That's a string of watermelons, and for some reason I get on with that one but not the string of pearls. So the issue with string of pearls is that they like quite bright light actually, like a window bright. I used to keep it by my cacti. It did okay for a bit. I just didn't know when to water it because it's semi-succulent. You're only meant to water it every 3 to 4 weeks-ish. And I think the first time I overwatered it, the second time I underwatered it, and then the third time it just got mealybugs and it was obliterated. Literally all you need to do is blink and it dies. That's the thing. Maybe in the future I'll try it again because I just think they look really cool and weird. And I like cool and weird. But I would definitely not recommend it for a beginner because they're just so temperamental. Once you get it right, you get it right, but I'm not at that point yet. I'm fine, weirdly enough, with string of hearts, the string of watermelons, string of turtles, but not the string of pearls. Also, the next one is another common one that you'll see in shops a lot, and that is the Croton. So people are usually drawn to this one because it's fiery, it's got those bright, warm colours on it, and you find them in supermarkets, just shops for like a few pounds if it's a small one. The reason why this one is such a diva is because it loves like almost full sun, very, very bright indirect, even sometimes direct sunlight. The slightest bit of underwatering, it will just flop, drop all its leaves, so it's just a stick. And last but not least, it's another spider mite magnet. I don't know why. Where do all these spider mites come from and why do they keep eating our plants? But I totally understand why people like this one. It's not my cup of tea, but a lot of people really want to try with these, but they're just they're just definitely not beginner friendly. Okay, and last but not least is caladium. So these guys are quite similar to the alocasia, very similar care. But the thing with these guys is that they don't have leaves all year round. So sometimes they do. So they come from rhizomes, so like little potato roots thingies that are in the soil. And sometimes they'll just go, never mind. And they'll go into their little bulb. And then you have to wait a while. And then they come back up again. I totally understand why people love these. They're so beautiful. I did try it once. I got a little bulb in a mystery box and it was this gorgeous kind of red blue colour. I would like to try it again in the future, but they're just not good for beginners, but I just straight up would not recommend this for a beginner. They're really hard to get the watering right, exactly like the alocasia, very similar. They don't like to have too much water because if that rhizome rots, which they do very easily, it's gone. It's gone. But if everything dies off and the root is fine, it can grow back. It's just a bit of effort, isn't it, really? I've just found that they get mushy very quickly and they shed a lot if they're not happy, and it's just a bit of a disaster, really. You just have to really stay on top of it, and if you're a beginner, that can be quite overwhelming. I know I was quite overwhelmed with mine. I was like, don't die, and it died. So, oh, actually, I thought of another one. So, this one I was after for such a long time. So that's the Philodendron verrucosum, and oh, dude, do you want to see it now? Da, 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 da. As you can see, it's still alive. There is hope, but this one is such. I've never met like it's a person. Never had a plant so spider mighty like the alocasia and the Cathia. This one's 10 times worse. Don't know why. I think it must be the velvetiness that they love. It's weird, man. And it was such a thirsty philodendron. I think I underwatered it at the beginning because I was treating it like a normal philodendron, so water it every like 2 weeks or so. Medium to indirect light, but this one, it likes almost really bright indirect, which was shocking for a velvety plant. I don't usually want that because I'm scared they're gonna crisp up, but as soon as I moved it under a grow light, it was good, it was growing. And then spider mites came, and I think that's the reason why I have a spider mite infestation. We're on the fix now. They seem to have died down since getting beneficial mites, but oh my god, it's just not worth the stress. I know not everyone would probably aim to get this one. They're not cheap, but they're not expensive. But I understand people want to get really cool stuff because it's such a gorgeous plant. But yeah, no, just avoid, if you could take any advice from this, avoid any thin leaved plants. They usually cause the most stress. That's why Monstera are so easy. They're so thick and plump that they can hold water and they're more hardy. Whereas Cathia, no. They're so paper thin. They're just prone to everything. Right, so I think that concludes the list. There's probably millions more because every plant is different, but let me know if you've had any experience with any of these or if actually you get on with them. I'm curious to know because everyone's different, and let me know what plants you would add to this list. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's helped you out if you're a tad overwhelmed and you didn't know where to start. I'll leave all my social medias down below, so that's Instagram and TikTok. I'm always active on there if you've got any questions on there, and if you want to see me talk more, you probably don't, about plants, I'm always on there, so. And if you want a 10% off Grow Gang lights, if you want to get some lovely lighting for your plants to help them grow in this dreary, dreary autumn, check it out. I hope you have a lovely day, whatever it is, wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.